The cold metal streets of Colony 9 stretched empty under the artificial night sky. Marcus, a weary maintenance engineer, trudged home from another 16-hour shift at the processing plant. His tool bag weighed heavy on his shoulder, and all he wanted was hot food and his narrow bed. But then he heard it, a soft whimper echoing from the shadows between the storage units. Following the sound deeper into the industrial district, Marcus discovered a small figure huddled behind discarded machinery. The child was unlike any human he'd seen. Her skin held a faint lavender hue, her limbs were impossibly thin, and her large dark eyes reflected the overhead lights like mirrors. She clutched a scrap of foil wrapper, gnawing on it desperately. "Hey, there," Marcus said softly, crouching down. "You hungry?" The girl froze, terror flashing across her features. She pressed herself against the cold wall, trembling. Marcus slowly reached into his pack and pulled out his dinner ration. He placed it on the ground between them. "It's okay. I won't hurt you." Minutes passed before she crept forward like a frightened animal. She devoured the food with desperate hunger while Marcus waited patiently. "What's your name?" he asked gently. Her voice was barely a whisper. "Zara." "Where's your family, Zara?" Her eyes filled with tears and she shook her head. When she spoke again, it was in a melodic alien language he couldn't understand. Marcus looked around the deserted alley. No child should be alone here, especially not at night. "I have a warm place nearby, just for tonight until we figure this out." Something in his tone must have reassured her because when he stood and offered his hand, she took it. His apartment was small but clean. Marcus gave Zara a blanket, heated some soup, and watched as she explored the space with wonder, touching the walls, staring at the ceiling lights, testing the softness of his old couch. She hadn't spoken since giving her name, but as she curled up under the blanket with the soup bowl in her hands, she looked up at him and whispered a single word in heavily accented standard. "Safe?" "Yes," Marcus replied. "You're safe here." For the first time since finding her, Zara smiled. Over the following days, Marcus contacted child services, filed reports, and searched the colony databases. No missing alien children, no families looking for her. Zara remained unclaimed, and gradually she began to settle into his routine. She was intelligent and observant, learning basic standard phrases within days. She helped with simple tasks around the apartment and drew intricate patterns on scraps of paper, symbols and star charts that seemed to tell stories he couldn't read. One evening, as he tucked her into the makeshift bed he'd arranged, she looked up at him with those enormous dark eyes and said something that changed everything. "Papa?" Marcus felt his heart shift. He'd never planned on being a father. His life had been simple, predictable, solitary. But looking down at this fragile alien child who'd somehow chosen to trust him, he realized that maybe some of the best things in life weren't planned at all. "Yes," he whispered back. "Papa." Weeks turned into months, and Zara bloomed under Marcus's care. Her fearful flinching disappeared, replaced by curiosity and even laughter. She learned to operate the apartment's systems, helped sort his tools, and filled the quiet space with alien humming that sounded like wind chimes. But some nights, she still woke crying, calling out in her native tongue. She would pad to the window and stare into the darkness as if waiting for something. "Are you looking for someone?" Marcus asked one night, finding her there. "Mama," she whispered, the standard word heavy with longing. Marcus felt a chill. Aw, this time he'd assumed Zara was an orphan, but what if her mother was still out there? What if she was searching too? "Is she coming back?" he asked gently. Zara nodded solemnly. "When safe." The next day, Marcus used his engineering clearance to access the colony's restricted databases. What he found made his blood run cold. Reports of illegal slave operations, rescued captives, families torn apart. One file mentioned an alien woman who'd escaped with a child, but they'd been separated during the chaos. That evening, as Marcus walked home from work, he felt eyes on him. A figure lingered in the shadows across the street, watching his building. When he looked directly at the spot, whoever it was melted away into the alley. His instincts, honed from years in the outer colonies, screamed danger. At home, he found Zara drawing frantically, picture after picture of two figures, one large and one small, reaching for each other across vast distances. In the corner of each drawing was the same symbol, a star with trailing light like a comet. "What does this mean?" Marcus asked, pointing to the symbol. "Hope," Zara said simply. "Mama's hope." That night, Marcus barely slept. He set up motion, sensors around the apartment, and kept his old security blaster within reach. If someone was watching them, they weren't just curious neighbors. The next evening, his precautions proved justified. The sensors triggered as he was putting Zara to bed. Someone was moving in the stairwell. Marcus dimmed the lights and peered through the reinforced door viewer. A slight figure stood in the hallway, swaying with exhaustion. The form was hunched, wrapped in tattered cloth, but something about the silhouette made his breath catch. The figure collapsed. Grabbing his medical kit, Marcus carefully opened the door. On the floor lay an alien woman, her skin the same lavender tone as Zara's. She was severely malnourished, her leg bound with bloodied fabric, and her breathing was shallow and labored. But her eyes were identical to Zara's. "Mama!" Zara's voice came from behind him as she pushed past and fell to her knees beside the woman. The alien woman's eyes fluttered open, focusing on her daughter's face. She whispered something in their shared language, and Zara began to cry, not from sadness but from pure joy. Marcus helped them both inside, his mind racing. He'd prepared for many things, but not for this moment when his carefully ordered world would be turned upside down once again. As he watched mother and daughter embrace, he realized that his role in their story was far from over. It was just beginning. Her name was Lyra, and her story unfolded over several days as she recovered. Her strength. Marcus provided food, medical care, and patience while she struggled to find words in standard that could express the horrors she'd endured. 5 years, she whispered, sitting by the window with Zara curled against her side. 5 years in the mining camps. They took me from a transport ship, said my people's technical skills were valuable. Marcus listened without judgment as she described the underground facilities, the forced labor, the systematic brutality designed to break spirits and extract compliance. When she spoke of Zara's birth in captivity, her voice became barely audible. Gave her everything I could. My food, my warmth, stories of our homeworld. I promised her we would be free someday. How did you escape? Marcus asked. Colonial forces raided the camp. In the chaos, I grabbed Zara and ran. But I was shot. She touched her leg where fresh scars crossed old ones. I had to hide her. I thought if I led them away first, I could come back for her. Marcus understood now why Zara had been alone in the alley, why she'd learned to survive on scraps and shadows. I watched your building for weeks, Lyra continued. I saw her laugh for the first time. I heard her call you Papa. She was healing with you in ways I never could provide alone. The weight of her words settled over them. This wasn't just a reunion, it was a crossroads. What do you want to do now? Marcus asked carefully. Lyra looked at her daughter, then at him. I want her to be safe. I want her to be happy. But I also want... She hesitated, as if the desire itself was dangerous to voice. I want to be part of that safety, that happiness. Over the following days, they developed a routine. Lyra was weak but determined to contribute. She helped with household tasks, shared meals with them, and slowly began to trust that this sanctuary was real. Marcus watched her interact with Zara, the gentle touches, the whispered conversations in their native language, the way they seemed to communicate with just glances. But he also noticed how Lyra watched him. There was gratitude, yes, but something deeper. When their hands accidentally touched while reaching for the same dish, she didn't pull away. When he found her crying quietly one evening, she let him sit beside her in comfortable silence. I don't know how to do this, she admitted one night after Zara was asleep. Do what? Live without fear. Trust that tomorrow will be like today. Believe that kindness doesn't have a price. Marcus turned to face her fully. It doesn't. Not here. And what about us? The question hung in the air between them. Zara has her papa. But I'm just grateful. I don't want to be just grateful anymore. Her honesty took his breath away. What do you want to be? I want to belong somewhere, to someone. Not as a rescued refugee or a victim who needs saving. As myself. As a woman who could love and be loved if given the chance. Marcus had been asking himself the same question for weeks. Watching Lyra with Zara, seeing her strength emerge as she healed, he'd begun to imagine possibilities he'd never considered before. Stay, he said simply. Not as a guest, not temporarily. Stay as family. Tears filled her eyes. Are you sure? This isn't pity or obligation? This is choice, Marcus replied, taking her hand. Yours and mine. They were interrupted by a small voice from the doorway. Does this mean Mama stays forever too? Zara stood in her nightclothes, hope shining in her dark eyes. Marcus and Lyra looked at each other, then at the child who had brought them together. Yes, they said in unison. Forever. Their happiness was fragile, and they all knew it. Marcus had hoped that whoever had been hunting Lyra would give up, assume she'd died or moved on, but one morning that hope shattered. A message appeared on his personal communicator. We know where you are. We know what you're hiding. Surrender the alien woman and child by midnight, or face the consequences. Marcus showed the message to Lyra, whose face went pale. They found us. Who are they? Marcus demanded. Bounty hunters. The mining consortium puts prices on escaped workers, dead or alive. Her hands shook as she spoke. They won't stop, the bounty is too high. Marcus felt a cold rage building in his chest. Then we don't run. We fight. Marcus, no. You don't understand what these people are capable of. And you don't understand what I'm capable of when it comes to protecting my family. The word family hung between them, and Lyra's expression softened despite the fear. Your family? Both of you. That's what this is now, isn't it? That evening, Marcus implemented a plan he'd been developing since the first signs of surveillance. His years in the outer colonies hadn't been spent just maintaining equipment. He'd helped set up defense systems, had dealt with raiders and worse. His apartment building might look civilian, but it sat on the remains of an old military outpost. The bones of that fortification were still there, waiting to be awakened. He activated shielding systems that had been dormant for years, set up sensor networks in the surrounding blocks, and prepared defensive positions throughout his building. If the hunters wanted a fight, he'd give them one they wouldn't forget. Take Zara to the emergency shelter in the basement, he told Lyra as the sun set. There's food, water, and communications equipment. If something happens to me, no. Lyra's voice was firm. We face this together or not at all. Lyra, be reasonable. You said we were family. Families don't abandon each other. She moved closer, her alien features beautiful in the dim light. I've been running and hiding for years. I won't do it anymore, especially not from someone who's already given me so much. Before Marcus could respond, she kissed him. It was soft, desperate, full of everything they hadn't had time to say. When they broke apart, she whispered, I love you. Not because you saved us, but because you chose us. Every day, you choose us. I love you too, he replied, the words feeling both natural and revolutionary. The attack came at midnight, just as promised. 5 hunters, armed and coordinated, moving through the building like they'd done this 1,000 times before. But they hadn't counted on Marcus's preparations or Lyra's determination to protect her new home. The battle was fierce but brief. Marcus's defensive systems channeled the hunters into kill zones where he waited with superior positioning and firepower. Lyra, drawing on survival skills learned in the camps, moved through the building's maintenance passages to strike from unexpected angles. When the smoke cleared, the hunters were down, and Marcus was bleeding from a grazer wound to his shoulder. Lyra rushed to his side while Zara emerged from the shelter, eyes wide but trusting. "Is it over?" Zara asked. Marcus looked at the scattered enemies, then at the woman and child who had become his world. "Yes," he said. "It's over." The colony security forces arrived within the hour, alerted by Marcus's emergency beacon. The bounty hunters were arrested, and formal charges were filed against the mining consortium. With colonial protection now in place, the family was finally, truly safe. As dawn broke over Colony 9, Marcus sat on his apartment's small balcony with his arm around Lyra. Zara slept peacefully on the couch inside, her drawings of family scattered around her like paper blessings. "What happens now?" Lyra asked. "Now, we live," Marcus said simply. "We build something real together. I never thought I'd have this chance. Neither did I. But here we are." Lyra smiled, and in that smile, Marcus saw their future. Not just survival, but joy. Not just safety, but love. Not just a family born of necessity, but one chosen freely, forged in fire, and strong enough to last forever. 6 months later, their life had settled into something Marcus had never dared to dream of. Normalcy touched with magic. The apartment had been renovated and expanded. What started as a bachelor's quarters now hummed with the energy of a real home. Lyra had proven gifted not just with technology but with making spaces beautiful. Alien textiles hung on the walls, and small crystal formations she'd crafted caught and reflected light in mesmerizing patterns. Zara attended the colony's integrated school, where her quick mind and artistic talents made her popular with both human and alien classmates. She still drew constantly, but now her pictures showed 3 figures standing together under bright skies, all of them smiling. Marcus had been promoted to chief maintenance engineer, partly due to his heroic defense of his family, but mostly because Lyra's technical knowledge combined with his practical experience had revolutionized the colony's infrastructure. They worked together now, partners in every sense of the word. But it was the quiet moments that meant the most. Like this evening, as they sat in their small garden, a patch of earth Lyra had coaxed into blooming with both earth and alien plants. Zara played nearby, building something intricate with spare circuit boards while humming one of her mother's lullabies. "I have something to tell you," Lyra said, her voice carrying a note Marcus couldn't identify. He looked up from the technical manual he'd been reading. "Good something or bad something?" "Wonderful something." She smiled, that radiant expression that still made his heart skip. "I went to the medical center today for my regular checkup. And it seems our family is going to grow." It took a moment for her meaning to register. When it did, Marcus's manual fell from suddenly nerveless fingers. "You mean, I'm pregnant." Lyra's eyes sparkled with tears of joy. "We're going to have a baby." Marcus couldn't speak. He pulled her into his arms, holding her close while the magnitude of it washed over him. Another child, their child, born of love instead of captivity, welcomed into safety instead of fear. "Are you happy?" Lyra whispered against his shoulder. "Happy doesn't begin to cover it," he managed. I'm overwhelmed in the best possible way." They broke apart to find Zara standing nearby, her expression curious. "What's wrong? Why are you crying?" "Nothing's wrong," Lyra said, kneeling to her daughter's level. "In fact, something very right is happening. You're going to be a big sister." Zara's eyes went wide. "Really? A baby? For us?" "For us," Marcus confirmed. Zara launched herself at both of them and they tumbled onto the soft grass in a tangle of arms and laughter and overwhelming love. Later that evening, after Zara had been tucked into bed with extra stories about the baby who would soon join their family, Marcus and Lyra sat on their balcony watching the stars. "Do you ever think about how impossible this is?" Lyra asked. A human and an alien building a life together on a colonial outpost at the edge of known space. Every day, Marcus admitted. And then I remember that the best things in life are usually impossible until they're not. I used to look at the stars and see only distance, how far I was from home, how far I had to go to find safety. Now when I look at them, I see possibility. I see the future. What do you see in our future? Lyra was quiet for a moment, her hand resting on her still flat stomach. I see Zara teaching her little brother or sister to draw those star patterns. I see you building toys and cursing when they don't work right. I see family dinners that last too long because we're too busy laughing to finish eating. That sounds perfect. I see us growing old together, watching our children have children of their own. I see love that lasts not because it's easy, but because we choose it every single day. Marcus took her hand, marveling as he always did at how perfectly it fit in his. You know what I see? What? Home. Not a place, not a building, but a feeling. You and Zara, and this new little one. You're my home. Lyra leaned against his shoulder, and they sat in comfortable silence as the artificial night deepened around them. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new joys, new moments to navigate together. But tonight they had everything they needed. Love freely given and gratefully received, a future full of promise, and the quiet satisfaction of knowing that sometimes the most beautiful stories begin with the simplest acts of kindness. In the distance, a transport ship rose from the colony's spaceport, its lights tracing a bright arc across the star field. But Marcus and Lyra barely noticed. They were already exactly where they belonged, together, home forever.